And we are live. Good morning, everyone. Great to see you all, and thank you for joining this great interview with Mr. James Richardson,
Thank you for
Professor
inviting me.
Extraordinaire and Interim Academic Director of our Communications and Media program at the CUNY School of Professional Studies. How are you, James? Good
I'm
morning.
doing good, Jorge. How are you?
Very good, very good. Thanks for joining us and dedicating some time to talk about the communications and media program at SPS, and particularly from the point of view of the student, whether it's a current student or prospective student who's thinking about communications and media in terms of pursuing a career in that field. So I know you have dedicated many years of your own career to this field. So I thought it might be a good idea to start by you sharing a little bit of your story, how you got into this field and how you got into higher education.
Absolutely. It's a long story, very convoluted story. I worked for a number of years for MetLife in the data networking department. And I worked in the corporate environment after graduating from college, and did that for a few years, took advantage of my company's tuition reimbursement plan to go back to get my advanced degrees. And I wanted to go in areas that were technology based because I was working in a tech field at the time, and they paid for it totally, which was something that I always recommend to students, is to always try to see if you can get someone else to pay for your education if possible. So after that, I worked in the field. I left MetLife, went and worked for a number of the dot-coms. And after that whole dot-com meltdown, a friend of mine was, you speak relatively well, so, I think you'd be a great teacher. So she got me interested in adjuncting, and I did that for like literally a semester. And that was during the time that CUNY was having a big push for digital media. And I basically wound up at LaGuardia Community College, where I was there for 22 years. With, stints at some other colleges, SBS being one of them. So I've basically been teaching in the field of digital media and communications, and essentially these are all.
So since, sorry to interrupt, but since 2000 then, or approximately, that's when you started?
Exactly.
Right after the dot-com bubble burst.
Absolutely. So I came and we started up the new media technology program at LaGuardia, and I ran that for a number of years. During the a few years after that, I was asked to see if I wanted to come over to SBS to work for take over the communication and media program, and I did that from 2013 to 2016. And the goal was initially for me to come learn all about online education, how it's used, and then basically transit that information throughout the rest of CUNY, if at all possible.
Okay. Great.
So I've been in higher education for a number of years. And it's an interesting time to be at SBS now. When I was here in 2013 through 2016, higher education was still a little nervous about online education. You had a lot of people who were hesitant, like, how are we going to implement this? If there's one good thing that can be said about the pandemic, was that it basically spotlighted how remote education, how important it can be when done correctly and done in the right circumstances. And SBS is, and that's why when I was asked to come back and serve as the interim director while Elizabeth Alsop was on research leave, I kind of jumped at the chance to see how had the field changed since the last time I was here, and what new things could be learned from this experience.
Excellent. So we're lucky to have you, and I know you have a presentation you want to share with us regarding the evolution of communication and media and careers in the field. So we already covered a little bit of your background. So let's talk a little bit about communications and media at SPS, if you like.
Absolutely. Communication and media was the first online degree program in CUNY. It's the oldest at SBS and one of the first within CUNY altogether. Initially, it was called Communication and Culture. And the reason it was because CUNY at the time was trying to design a generic online degree that wouldn't overlap into any of the other fields. Because I said before, people were a little hesitant, didn't know how the online education methodology was going to impact their programs. So SBS very smartly designed a generic degree that could address many of the things that returning workers wanted to gain in terms of becoming obtaining their college degree. So that went on for a few years until SBS started developing additional degree programs. So communication and culture was reformatted to become communication and media, which gave it a greater focus in terms of utilizing communication as the methodology for how all of these other fields kind of intersected and overlapped, such as journalism, such as entertainment. It's a conversant degree that basically brings in aspects of a lot of other disciplines. So, it essentially, communication has radically changed over the last few years in terms of the way we consume information. I remember a time when we used to, come in on the train in the morning and you'd see everyone reading their New York Times paper spread out in the train. You don't see that anymore. The way people consume information now is through smart devices, through handheld tablets and so forth. Communication, public relations, journalism, commerce, entertainment, none of these things have essentially changed. It's only the method and how they're delivered. And communication and media is exactly a program that talks to how we're going to be developing content, how we're going to basically be managing these new technologies, these new methods of conversing or connecting with one another over time. So it's very relevant and it's very evolving constantly. We have a number of classes in the program that address this. As I said before, digital journalism is one of the larger ones that we're going to be moving more into. Journalism, people have talked about, it's a changing or evolving field. Less and less people read newspapers. However, more and more people are consuming their information in other venues. So in terms of how we create content, writing for these disciplines is a big change. Social media and ethics in terms of how we engage with one another over social media is increasingly important. We have classes in corporate communications. Businesses are going to need participants, workers, individuals who essentially know how to get the message of the corporation across in an effective and media savvy way. We talked about data analytics, the possibility or the ways in which we use images and graphics to tell a story. I don't know about you, but I'm a big podcaster. I love basically, podcasting has essentially changed a lot of the ways in which we listen to information. And all of these aspects have, as I said before, radically shifted the way in which we communicate and interact with one another. And we at SBS have a number of classes in the communication and media program that address those particular issues. Video production, in terms of digital storytelling, telling stories through video and motion images. So as time,
so if you wanted to become, say, a videographer or content creator on different social and other forms of media, would the communications and media program be the right choice for you? I imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And in that context, something we have been hearing a lot, particularly in the last few months, is how AI is evolving in a way that some content creators are trying to get a little bit nervous about the fact that a computer might be able to substitute or replace them. So I'd like to get your perspective on that that threat or presumed threat.
Chat GPT or any of these other AI programs are merely tools. They can create some interesting images. They can create, interesting text, but that doesn't mean it doesn't take out the individual piece of it. You have tons of people who have digital cameras and video editing software that's available to them. You have people who've had copies of Photoshop for the last 10 or 15 years. Just because you have the tools doesn't mean that the tools themselves are going to make you effective or that you're going to be able to create content that's interesting. There's a human element that's you can't really pull from that. I've seen some of the images and some of the videos and some of the things that people have been able to do with Chat GPT and some of the other AI programs. And I've heard a lot of my colleagues very nervous about, students using this technology to create their own essays and so forth.
Yeah.
And my answer to them has always been, then you need to figure out ways to change your assignments, change the way in which you're going to be testing people for the various skill sets. Once the technology is out, you're not going to stop it. So you have to find ways on how to deal with it. We've had similar issues with, when I'm old enough to remember when they had calculators and you would take calculators into exams, or they wouldn't allow you to take calculators into exams. Now, if we look back on that, we find it kind of hilarious. It's merely a tool. If you don't know the correct formulas, if you don't know the ways in which to input the information into the calculator or into any of these AIs, to a certain extent, it's going to spit out something that's not going to be human or not as entertaining. So I kind of balk at that. At least we get to like some Star Wars or Star Trek type of environment where the computer really has, it's not something to really worry about. We have to design new applications, new ways of testing, new assignments so that it just makes it more difficult for.
And you have a word in this list of class topics that I think is essential to the discussion, which is storytelling. The power of a good story and the creativity that is required to have a powerful story is something that while machines might try to imitate and can do a pretty good job at it, superb storytelling, I think, is still pretty much a human endeavor, and will continue to be for quite some time. So I'm glad to see this list of courses. It seems like a really, really complete and robust program. And I'm wondering, career-wise, what type of career opportunities can this program allow some of our graduates?
Much in the same way as many liberal arts classes or degrees allow you to leverage or build a certain set of core skills that allow you to move into multiple disciplines. The same is true with communication and media. Stop and think about what field do you go into, or any that where you don't have to learn how to communicate, whether through writing, whether through speech, whether through, images. There's always that method of how do we connect to one another. So, we have, elements of broadcasting. We have people who've moved into film careers. Social media and social media marketing is a big one. Being able to create digital content, whether it be, writing for blogs, whether it be, creating individual channels on multiple platforms, whether it be YouTube, whether it be Vimeo, or any of the other major channels. All of these are fields that are continuing to grow that can either be done through a corporate method or for independents who want to basically branch out and work on their own. So the flexibility in terms of, what our graduates can do is almost endless. It builds.
That's where the use of the technology in a very creative and unique and new way is critical. And that's why we have such a great faculty teaching our programs. One thing I like to highlight is that several of our faculty members are practitioners. So they are in the industry, they are serving clients, and bring that perspective of career path into the classroom as well. So that's an important and critical difference between CUNY, SPS, and maybe other schools. So with that, let me move on to the next slide. You have a profile of one of your alumni. So can you tell us a little bit about Thomas?
Yeah, I can tell you quite a bit about Thomas. Thomas was actually a colleague of mine when I was at LaGuardia. And the reason that I bring that up is because Tom was in the position that a lot of workers are generally facing, where he didn't have his degree at the time. And one of the things he wanted to do in order to advance within his field was to go back and get his 4-year degree. However, he was living in Connecticut at the time. He had just gotten married. A kid was on the way. He had a very demanding full-time job. So the problem that he had was, how was he going to be able to do this when traveling, commuting was going to be a big problem, to be quite frank.
Yeah, sure.
So, I just started over at SBS, and I told him, take a look at the program over here. He took a look. In terms of being given credit for his prior learning, he had like 1 year of community college, I believe he had. So, he was nervous that, was I going to have to go back and redo an entire 4 years to get my degree? I said, take a look. SBS grants credit for prior learning. He had done a number of documentaries at that time. So he put together a portfolio that allowed him to get some credit for the past or the professional work that he had done previously.
Got it.
So for him, it was a perfect match. He was the person that SPS is essentially made for. Time constraints, had some college, wanted to progress in his current field, and he basically wound up finishing up in 2.5 years. Graduated in 2017, and because he had gotten the education bug yet again, he wound up continuing on to get his MFA over at Hunter in their integrated media arts department. And now he's actually teaching as an adjunct at a number of the CUNYs. I brought Tom up because he was someone who I personally interacted with very significantly with. And this helped to make a definitive change in his career and the trajectory of where his life was going.
So he's currently teaching at Hunter or other CUNY colleges?
He's teaching adjunct at LaGuardia and I believe at Queensboro, but I'd have to check on that.
Okay, great.
But he's also gone and finished up 2 additional documentaries that has made the Film Fest circuit, and he's won a number of awards. He can be found on his website, vhsmassacre.com. He runs a number of podcasts. So he's taken his skills in media and used it to enhance his own career prospects. I'll
definitely look for him. vhsmassacre.com.
Correct.
Excellent. Awesome. Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about how the landscape is changing.
Absolutely.
So you want to take us through a little bit of that history?
There was a time when, you had video editors, you had, audio engineers and so forth. Most fields are still here, don't get me wrong. But the fact that we have smartphones nowadays puts an enormous amount of power directly into the hands of the average person. News reporting, sometimes much of the news that we see on TV is shot off of cell phone cameras. There are people who are shooting feature films utilizing smartphones. Yep. So the power that we have now in these small little devices has radically changed the way in which we not only consume content, but how we also create it. The ability to have virtual studios. So I don't need to have a huge sound stage in order to craft a message. With a green screen and a couple of lights. I'm actually sitting here in my own little virtual studio in my house. I have a number of small lighting setups right over me. I have multiple cameras set up because this allows me to do a lot of video casting and podcasting very simply, very easily, and very cheaply, to be quite honest.
Yeah. And the sound is great too. So you have a professional microphone?
Yeah, I have a whole mixer. I've gone a little bit, much to my wife's dismay. I spent a little bit more money on my sound quality because people will watch bad video. We watch bad video all the time, but people won't deal with bad sound. So having
Oh, that's true.
good audio
That's true.
is incredibly important.
I agree. I agree. And as you said, the technology is evolving so fast and reducing in cost that almost anyone could start a podcast or a blog with a V, like a video blog from home, and do it successfully. As long as, of course, they have a good idea and execute on that idea.
And have some personality. This is why, going back to the whole chat GPT stuff that we were talking about, the AI doesn't have a personality for most of these. So it's still, there's a human element that has to come through. These are all tools. And full disclosure, these are two of my setups at home, my PC setup and my Mac setup. And as you can see here, there's multiple cameras. And these are not expensive systems. The Mac system that I have at the bottom is a small Mac Mini, the cheapest Mac that you can kind of get into.
I do see a bat cave theme, recurring theme there.
You're really going to out me as a nerd, Jorge. That's not cool.
Very nice setup. Now, curious, why do you have one on PC and one on Mac? Couldn't you do with just one system?
Absolutely, but I also teach. And as part of my ability to be able to teach, I need to be able to teach on multiple platforms, because there are going to be some students who have PCs. There are going to be some students who have Macs. There are even some students who, fool around with Linux. And as academic, as a professional, as someone who's committed to making sure that I can give my students the best possible education, it's important for me to understand multiple platforms and how content can be created on all of them.
I see on the comments, George is sending you a bad signal, so you might need to go soon. But by the way, for those members of the audience, if you have any questions for James, feel free to add it on the comment section. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, which is free open source software. Tell us a little bit about it.
Absolutely. This is also one of the reasons why being able to create content has changed radically, because the tools there are a number of tools which are open source and absolutely free. There was a time when I first started teaching this back in the 2000s and so forth, or when I was actually learning a lot of this myself, where the software was actually more expensive than the hardware. And sometimes that can still be the case. At schools like SPS, where we're basically working virtually, the ability to be able to offer open source software that can be readily downloaded, that's effective, that's comparable to the commercial grade programs for students to learn on, is a game changer. So this allows them to basically not incur enormous costs. And most of these pieces of software that are open source will run on lower spec machines. So sometimes you do not need the latest $6,000 Mac, even though that's great if you can get one. You can get by on a computer system that's 5, 6, that's under $1,000 essentially, whether PC or Mac, and that's a game changer.
Now, I've heard of and used OBS and Audacity, but can you tell us briefly what Inkscape, GIMP, and Shotcut do?
And there's one up top there also, Vlog Now, which is a mobile video editor. So if you wanted to basically edit on your smartphone, basically create content, edit it, everything there, and send it out to YouTube, Twitch, or any of the other major channels, Instagram, you name it, you can do it directly off of your smartphone. Inkscape and GIMP are two open source alternatives to Photoshop and Illustrator. So if you wanted to create, immersive images or, interesting graphic designs, those are programs that for free, those are two of the programs I would recommend. And both of them have been around for a while, probably about close to 20 years. So there's a really substantial user base that's there. Shotcut is an open source video editor, comparable in many ways to Adobe Premiere or Final Cut. As I said before, it's open source. It runs on PC and Mac. That's the other thing. All of these programs that you see right here are cross-platform. They will work on whatever operating system that you have. I didn't get into some of the more esoteric stuff, like some of the 3D modeling stuff like Blender, or there are also open source and that are extremely powerful. But
maybe we should have a part two, James, where we go more into the details of each of these tools. By the way, if you could, once we complete the interview, if you can include the links to some of these tools on the comment section for our audience, that would be helpful.
Sure enough.
Yeah, excellent.
So software is no longer, in my opinion, no longer an issue to creating content. Drones is another area that, I got into working with drones because of a YouTube influencer, a guy by the name of Casey Neistat, who was using these quite frequently to create his videos because he was getting really great cinematography from the YouTube videos that he was shooting. And he was using aerial footage from his drones. Drones has really changed the way in which we shoot video. And this is just one of the ways in terms of being able to get different angles and different perspectives that prior we would only have been able to get through using a helicopter or a very large gimbal type setup. The price on these has gotten so that, you can get a really solid entry level drone for under $500.
Oh, really?
Shoot 4K video. Yeah.
So they have gone down in price significantly. A reliable one. And how high can these drones go without losing?
They can go very high. However, there are regulations which are in place. One of the things I recommend is for those who are looking to get into the field, if they're really serious about doing this as a professional or utilizing this, because many of the news crews now will send out someone who has their Part 107 license to capture footage on the scene. So you do need a license for some to actually do it commercially, but that's also something that we could talk about actually teaching at some point.
So that'll be part 3. Will be a mini class on drones and licensing and uses. Great. But before we continue, James, we have a question from Mike. He is asking 2 questions actually. What do you like most working with our students at SPS? And even more importantly, who is the best Batman actor in your opinion? So, you can answer any of those 2 in the order that you prefer.
The thing that I like working with students at SPS is that, there are many things, but the thing I'll say mostly is that we can directly change the way that their lives are going in terms of offering them an opportunity to gain a new degree. Many of our students are working individuals. As someone who struggled himself going back to college to get my advanced degree, I can tell you it was a struggle. The ability to be able to take a class asynchronously at any time of the day. I'm a night person. I don't like being up early in the morning. So for me, if I could basically have taken a class at 12 p.m. at night, it would have been a game changer to me, especially when my kids came along. And, so being able to help them figure out a way to make their dreams a reality, to get that degree, that's the thing that I most love about working with SPS students. And SPS was specifically designed to help do that. In terms of the best Batman actor, believe it or not, it's going to be kind of controversial. I actually was kind of ticked off that Ben Affleck didn't continue on. I actually liked his version of Bruce Wayne. I thought the stories or the scripts that they gave him were crap, but I'd have to go with Affleck at this point.
Very good. So I'm going to go back to the presentation, and we only have a couple minutes left, so I'll move through this quickly. But can you tell us a little bit about what we're seeing on the screen?
These are virtual reality and 360 media devices, 360 cameras. Much the same way as AI is being talked about. Virtual reality, how we basically craft these new environments that we can interact with one another is going to be something that we're going to start to see changes happening in, particularly as the cost of the equipment starts to come down in price. Many of the headsets are they're still priced a little bit out of the area for most consumers. But
by the way, James, so for the benefit of the audience and particularly our faculty, we do have at SPS 360 cameras and Oculus VR headsets available. So if anyone is interested in incorporating this technology to the classroom, it would be a great opportunity to do so. Also, we are in the process of finishing the creation of 2 state-of-the-art multimedia recording studios with LED background walls. So a lot of really interesting content coming to a class near you. With that, I will just go straight to the goals for the future, and then I'll share your contact info. So if you want to share a little bit of this slide with the audience.
You know, Elizabeth Alsop is looking to make sure that we continue to give greater focus to the program, and I'm going to help in whichever way she needs to continue to update the program so that as things start to evolve, whether it be in the discipline for communication and media, whether industry or for employment trends, we start to tweak the classes, update the courses so that it meets the current needs of what our students require. Keep the curriculum flexible so that as changes happen, we're able to easily shift the curriculum to meet what the shifting demands are. And the major thing is, one of the areas that we want to move into is in the aspect of digital journalism, utilizing communication and media as a way to foster greater connections to the journalism field and to help students gain the necessary skills that will allow them to either develop their own independent content to tell their own stories. We've seen how journalism has been impacted by the use of smartphone cameras. We wouldn't have gotten many of the issues that we've seen in hotspots like China and other repressive locales without the use of citizen journalism. Being able to teach people how to craft credible content that's ethically sourced and that tells the truth. These things aren't going away. And this is an area where we can help our students be uniquely positioned to move directly into the opportunities that become available, or to help them make their own opportunities.
Great way to complete our interview. I'm sharing on the screen, James, the contact info for anyone who would like to reach out to James. You can do that at james.richardson@cuny.edu. And if you want to learn more about our SPS Communication Media Program, just visit us at our website, sps.cuny.edu. Well, James, we had a fascinating interview, a ton of information, a lot of content for a part 2, part 3, or even a part 4. So since it's early in the morning, and we know as a good fan of Batman, you're more of an evening person, we will let you go. But I do want to thank you for this presentation, for your leadership, for your constant look at possibilities, and for being exploring constantly what can be done in the context of communications and media. So thank you very, very much. And to the audience, thanks for joining us, and look forward to seeing you in a future interview. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.